Hi, it's me, Ingrid INFJ, and I wanted you guys to just see all of the cherries. There's like tons of cherries around me. We're going to be moving towards the bench, but I really did want to show you guys how it looks like, because here are some cherries, more cherries, more cherries, more cherries, more cherries. I mean, look at this tree. I've already eaten some of them, so I mean, there's plenty more for other people to get. And there are even some darker cherries that are like purple. I can't focus the camera. Okay, so anyway, there are still some in the background. These cherry trees are really like the cherries are edible, and they're just by the library, so anybody can go and pick them. And there's like plenty to go around. There's a lot that just falls and rots and feeds the birds. So I eat my fill now, and thought I would make a video. I've been feeling kind of bleh because the patients have been difficult, and also because it's been a year now since my INFJ friend last talked to me and door slammed me. Which I won't really go into more in this video. I just want to say that that's why I'm kind of just running on a queue. Basically, all of my videos have been pre-recorded during that time where I did not have internet. But yeah, it's been tough because our ex-INFJ friend stopped talking to me because of me going to see Florence and the Machine without him, and seeing Florence and the Machine was one of the best days of my life. And now it's tinged with melancholy, how INFPs do it. It's like, we'll have these memories, but they will be tinged with other memories and other feelings, and it will be all a mess and confusing. And I don't really feel that's great about the whole thing. And I feel very guilty, and I know that I shouldn't be feeling guilty, but the whole situation is too complex to wrap my head around, and it's been a year and I still can't wrap my head around it. And it's like any kind of grief, it's going to be always there, whether it will dull, I guess the pain will dull, but it will still be there. So I need to deal with that fact, because I don't think the INFPs are really great. I think that we can like live and bounce back, kind of, but inside we are very much scarred by the things that happen to us, because things affect us on such a deep level, compared to maybe some other types, because we're sensitive. And yeah, anyway, that was about this time of year. What has been happening today is that basically, or not today, but this week, I had a patient who was booked on me because that was actually listed on another doctor, because this doctor is on holiday, so I took care of them. Because basically the thing was that the reason that he was booked, the nurses, they sit in the telephone call. It's great that we have nurses that take the phone calls. Some places have only receptionists take the phone calls, but the nurses know like medical stuff. So that's great. They help us book the times. And they booked this time to me. And the booking said that it was about a sick leave for somebody who was who had an infection, a pulmonary infection or something, like a cough or something. So I was going to write a sick leave because I guess that she could contaminate others at her work. I think that she had a work that was pretty a job that was pretty social, so you had to. So I was going to write a sick leave about that. And so I meet the patient, I listen to the lungs, I do all of that stuff, and I say, oh well, okay, I'll write a sick leave for a week, and then you can go back to work. But contact us again if you still feel like you have trouble with your cough or breathing or that kind of thing. But then at the end of that meeting, she was like, no, that's not all I'm here for. And I'm like, what? my bag next to me fell at that. I was like, what? She was like, no, I'm here for my anxiety. And because I can't sleep. And I'm like, are you sure? I don't think that was in the booking. And she said, that's what I told the nurse on the phone. Of course she was manipulating me. She wasn't like... I was like, oh, all apologetic. And it's like, no. She talked to the nurse on the phone, and the nurse booked it as this certain problem. I mean, I'm not going to say this nurse's fault. And so I ended up in a situation where she started telling me that she was anxious and I needed to fix it now, And that makes me angry, because it's like, you came here under false pretenses, and now you want me to do something for you. And if I don't do something for you, then I'm suddenly like the bad guy. And I said, well, I'm writing the sick leave for your infection. I'm not writing it for your anxiety. And I said, you can get like temporary anxiety medication, but that's about it. And I thought that that was already me being extra nice, because the time had already gone. We'd already spent our half hour and I was done, And no, I had to keep going, and also had to write something, and there was a few extra steps to the thing that I thought that the visit was going to be, which is okay, But I did feel kind of at the end of my wits at that point, because also I was hungry and I wanted to eat lunch. That's no excuse to treating somebody badly, but I felt like, okay, I've done my job, now it is time for us to leave. And then she calls a week later and needs a sick leave. And then the nurses book this patient onto me, even though I'm not the patient's doctor. The patient's doctor is on holiday. So I got the telephone call and I said, well, I can't do a sick leave about your anxiety because we didn't even talk about your anxiety. And also your doctor has a plan with you about your sick leave, because she already had a sick leave. She could work, she had a sick leave, part-time sick leave. You can have a part-time sick leave so that you are told that you have sick leave for 25% of the time rather than 100%. But of course she wanted to be on sick leave 100% of the time. Now, I have sympathy for people who have mental health problems, because I myself have mental health problems. I was already started on the wrong footing, because she had kind of manipulated me into this discussion about her anxiety. If she had been honest about the fact that she was there for her anxiety from the start, then I might have been, more lenient. But also this patient had a long-term relationship, or a long-term contact with her doctor who was on holiday. So I felt like I couldn't just jump in there and fix the sick leave. I was sabotaging my colleague's plan, and I didn't feel that was quite right either. I think that this patient used the opportunity that her doctor was on holiday to find another nicer doctor, basically me, to write a sick leave for her. And the fact that she had an infection was just the opportunity that she seized, And I don't want to think so badly about people, but unfortunately that's, from all the clues that I'm gathering, that's kind of what the situation was. So, and I told her I cannot set a diagnosis of anxiety and stuff on the phone. I cannot do this you need to wait until your doctor has come back, or you need to, like, get a second opinion from another doctor. And then she calls again, and they book her on me so that I meet her. And when this patient comes and meets me, she tells me, "Oh, it's you again. You see, we meet again." And I was like, calm down. And also, it was like she was kind of petulant about me not doing the way that she wanted, and that I was being silly by not, doing her sick leave, and that I was getting my punishment now, pretty much. And I panicked. I panicked because I felt the adrenaline going up. And I hadn't asked for this. I don't know why the nurses kept booking her on me, but it's because I met her the first time, so I might as well be the one who meets her next time. But I got also angry at the nurses for booking that on me without consulting me beforehand. Because, the whole visit was useless, because I knew that I was not going to write a sick leave. And it just leads to extra frustration for everyone. And I thankfully found one of the people, like her occupational therapist, that could help me with writing, because she had been there when the plan was written. So I talked to her, and I was in tears. I was crying, and she was like, "It's okay, I will meet the patient, and then we can talk about the plan together." So she met the patient instead of me, because I was feeling like I was going to burst. And I would be acting like unprofessional. If I had stayed in that room with that patient 1 second more, I would have burst. And, I have limits to my patience, So then I told my supervisor about this. And my supervisor was like, "Oh, that shouldn't have been the case. You shouldn't have had this booked on you, especially since you'd already said no the first time." But I felt really frustrated about that. So then I had to carry that around that evening. And then the next day I came to work, and we had our weekly doctors meeting. And I talked about that to the doctors meeting. It was a pretty good discussion, because we were just junior doctors there pretty much, except for my supervisor. And we were talking about, how do we deal with this kind of frustration? How do we deal with this kind of patient? What are your tips? And there are certain tips that were pretty interesting. Like, one of them said that she records. Of course, you have to ask before you record, but a lot of people will say yes if you say, "Okay, I will record this conversation," and then she records, and then the patient suddenly is much nicer for some reason. There were some of my colleagues who have had people call the police on them. There have been people who have been sued. Fortunately for me, in Sweden, the suing process is much more complicated than in the US, and it's much less likely that you will be sued compared to the US. But still, it happens. And I don't know. So I did get some validation and also some tips, and I felt kind of supported, kind of also like dismissed, because some people have had it worse, but okay. But that has been frustrating. But I asked the nurses about this, and I did not get much support, unfortunately. Because they're like, "Oh, but we didn't book it wrong." That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that, you could have talked to me beforehand. And also, there's a kind of thing that like, well, if you can't manage that, then you can't manage being a doctor. And yeah, I don't know. It was a mixed bag. But then after all that, my supervisor got really angry at one of my colleagues, who's a resident doctor, like me. He's a little bit higher up in the hierarchy, let's say. He's been a resident for about 3, almost 4 years, and I've been a resident for only about 2 years. But I don't know what happened to my supervisor, but she snapped. And I'm guessing that she's an ISFJ. I think that she's an ISFJ, but it's like seeing an ISFJ snap, that is pretty terrifying, let's just say. Usually I'm on her side, but I think that in this case it was like she was not feeling good, you know, and she kind of, I think, unleashed this frustration onto somebody who did not deserve to have anger directed at him, you know. And it's because he had the we were talking about the emergencies, and he was like saying, well, maybe we should have a specialist doctor at the emergencies as well as a resident. But at the moment, in the middle of the summer, my supervisor is the only specialist at my workplace. All of the rest of us are just residents or junior doctors. So I understand that she doesn't want to be at the emergencies every day during the summer. So there isn't really a way to fix this problem. But she got snappy at him, you know, and I was like, you know, calm down, you know. She usually rarely says anything during these meetings. And, you know, she's usually the voice of reason, but in this case, like, she was really frustrated. And I think that all this tension around different patients from different doctors is really, really mounting to the point where even my very stable supervisor is cracking, you know. And then she left at 11 when the doctor's meeting was done. And I was supposed to have my supervising meeting, which I have every week after the doctor's meeting. And she left. She'd gone. And I was like, what? So she just left me to deal with my patients. And she'd been sick the week before, so I hadn't been able to have a meeting with her the week before. And so a lot of, like, patient cases start accumulating because I can't go further with them because I can't fix them myself. I can fix them myself, but it's not as good, you know. I can make mistakes, and you know, so I'm able to manage it, but it doesn't feel as great, you know. It feels like there's a lot of questions that I have, but so she just left without telling anybody. Then it ends up that she told, like, the secretary that she was working from home. But yeah, I felt kind of worried, I guess you could say. And I was like, you know, and there again I go on blaming myself for something that is clearly not my fault. But I don't want to put this burden onto other people, you know. And I complain quite a lot about things, but I don't want people to, you know, feel bad about, because I know that I feel bad when other people talk about their difficult patients. And yeah, I think it's very important that she stays at work, because otherwise we don't have any specialist doctor, basically, at my workplace. And that is a scary situation to be in. Next week, another doctor will be coming, so it will be fine. But this week she's alone. And yeah, it does concern me. Because I feel like we're all drowning, and I don't know. I had it's difficult because it's weighing on me, and I feel that weighing on me on top of the previous stuff that was weighing on me. And yeah, I need to go on holiday. That's basically the fact of it all, is that I need to go on holiday, because I know I've been sleeping badly too. I've been listening to the audiobook of Outlander because I had a few hours left on my Next Story subscription that were going to expire. I've read Outlander before, but so I wanted a little bit of a refresher before going on my Edinburgh trip. But the thing is, I haven't slept that well, so all I've done instead is basically listening to that audiobook. And I need to get away from here, you know. It's always the same people at my workplace, and it's always the same thing. And I need to do something else, do something new. Also, my ESFP colleague is having contraceptive problems, basically, that are pretty scary. I think that she's tried every single contraceptive on the earth. But now I think that she's like basically bleeding out and dying. So and she's like continuing on, like everything's fine. But I'm like, you know, that does not seem healthy. And she's trying to prepare for a wedding and all of the rest of the stressful patient stuff. So I don't want to take on everybody else's problems, but that's the fact of my life, you know. I can't completely just do my own thing. And that's a little bit contradictory because INFPs are supposed to be like, you know, selfishly, you know, being fiercely independent, doing their own thing. And I do that, but at the same time, everything affects me, you know. The things that happen all around me, they're important to me, and they affect me. And I have no filter that takes things in, so I'm just like, you know, thinking about like, oh. Also, I had a discussion in the changing room with one of the nurses, and this nurse is going to get tested for ADHD, so we talked a little bit about that. And then she told me, like, I was telling her about my difficulty with, like, well, I need to tell my parents about this, and she said that she would tell. Oh, the birds are doing some weird shit. She was telling me that her mom has Wernicke-Korsakoff's, which is basically like alcohol dementia, you could say. And I was like, I felt so sorry for her. Like, oh my God, you know, that's not, that's very unfortunate, you know. And then I started thinking like, oh, you know, I don't have any problems, you know. Why am I complaining when everybody else is having things so much harder, you know? And that's what I think is so awful, when people tell me that I'm self-centered and need to think about the starving children in Africa. It's like, I'm thinking about this all the time. But that doesn't stop me from complaining all the time, you know, and seeming self-centered. So I get both the disadvantages of being seen as self-centered and the disadvantages of being too selfless. It's like, I wish that I could get some positive of something. But no, I don't even get the positives of being selfish, and I don't even get the positives of being selfless, you know? And yeah, so I don't get any positive recognition, and then people get ideas about me, and I don't like that, you know? And so that brings me back then to thinking about my INFJ friend and how that went wrong, and thinking about what did I do wrong. And I did tons of things wrong, right? But were they really wrong? And also, wasn't my friend also not perfectly right, you know? There's so much backlash towards INFPs. And I'm not promoting hate towards other types, but I think that, like, you know, if other types got as much hate as INFPs got, you know, by people saying that we're impossible to deal with, and that we are selfish, and that we're irresponsible, and blah blah blah. If other types got as much backlash, then you'd hear about it, you know, and also you would, people would take them more seriously, it feels like. And when INFPs say that, you know, we are misunderstood, and that we are not, you know, that we're not treated kindly by other people, it kind of falls on like deaf ears. And you know, yes, I am sensitive, but and it's only a disadvantage, unfortunately. So yeah, that's all I had to say. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.